All right, so if you're coming over from the first video, this is part 2. It was way too long. As you can see, it's like 20 something minutes for each one of these videos. There's no other way really for me to cut it down where I think it would actually be valuable for you to watch it in that format. If you want to see it together all as a single video with all the timestamps together, let me know down in the comments and I'll upload the whole thing for the 5 of y'all that want to be able to watch the entirety of the video in a single sitting. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of the normal progression playthrough for the Leap Attack Barbarian. Now, if you're too high level, so let's say you're around my level at this point, Halbu actually will not sell a lot of them anymore, but you will be able to pick up a pike from him. Pick up a pike, take it. You can re-roll it with the chip gems if you happen to have extra at this point. And while you're here, you can also take a look to see if he has any really good weapons. Right now, he just has one with attack rating and then one with some poison damage, so I wouldn't pick them up. But being able to shop for something here like that Warhammer that wow, this thing's actually nuts. Enhanced damage with attack rating. I'm going to buy this so I can use it for the Diablo fight specifically, but especially on early game on a melee character. It is very, very easy if you're not using something like Steel or Malice to actually pick up really nice weapons from the vendors, especially when we don't have to worry about attack rating and all of that so much. We just need a weapon that says a lot of damage to be able to scale it with Leap Attack. Go ahead and pick that up right now. We also have an attack rating maul. Again, not as good as ours, but that's huge right there. That's going to be really, really nice for the Diablo fight. We only have about 33 mana, so when you're buying health potions and mana potions, continue to just buy light mana until you're actually in the Chaos Sanctuary. In the Chaos Sanctuary, they actually drain mana so quickly that these potions won't allow you to actually regenerate at all, and you will need to pick up greater mana potions when you're fighting the Stranglers. But for traveling there, for killing Izzy, for doing your Hellforge, make sure to still be using light mana potions because you literally can't benefit from the amount that you would get from greater mana potions, and it's just a huge gold sink at this point. We are going to do all the quests in Act 5, so we're going to kill Izzy so that we can get those additional points. We're going to blow up the Hellforge to see what type of rune that we get, as well as hopefully getting into a perfect ruby, which we're going to need to make Crushing Blow gloves or an open wound belt later on when we actually have the rest of the materials to craft. As far as levels, we really just want to be at least level 24 so that when we do the Ancients and we hit level 25, we'll be able to get experience in Act 5 as well as in Nightmare when we eventually transition there. If you wanted to be over leveled, it would be perfectly fine to actually get to level 25 before walking into Act 4 so that when you kill monsters here, you'll also get access to the experience. Whereas under that level, you're actually too low level to really get experience because of the way the XP penalty works. So again, just because the maul will typically be a hindrance when fighting Diablo, it'll get you killed more often than not. We're going to be using a Warhammer. And one of the best things about a Barbarian is that you don't actually need a shield to get additional resistances and the like. We happen to find the Diggler, Mr. Dirk Diggler himself right here. And the really cool part about Dirk Diggler is that it has 50 total resistance, 25 to fire and 25 to cold. This is really, really strong because we want to avoid being chilled for as long as possible. And we want to be able to survive Act 4, which means we need fire and lightning to do so. So I can actually throw this into my offhand, and all of a sudden my resistances go from 33 fire res and 0 cold res up to 58 and 25, which is huge for our overall survivability. So as you're picking up items, look for anything that might have resistances on it, or maybe a really nice proc like amplified damage, and keep that as something that you can throw into the offhand and utilize these different stats as they become available to you, because it'll go a really, really long way to help smooth out that early game transition. Another interesting thing that you can actually do, kind of harkening back to the idea of using a Dirk Diggler in the offhand if I don't happen to have a good resistant shield, is that there is another quest item that you can continue to use until you complete that quest. So if I was using my Warhammer and I wanted to put some additional survivability in the offhand, I could actually go pick up the Hellforge Hammer. The cool thing about the Hellforge Hammer is that it has additional defense and it has 40 fire resistance. So if I had nothing else on while I was going to clear out Chaos Sanctuary, I could literally put on the Hellforge Hammer for its added resistance just to complete it, and then I could go back and do the Hellforge quest if I wanted to. There's so many cool things that you can put into the offhand of a barbarian for additional survivability, and this is probably one of my favorite ones to use on my own personal speed runs when I'm leveling my own barb, just to get some additional stats in that offhand. Another thing to talk about, just because I intend on using it and I hadn't covered it before, is making the Nadir rune word. So I happen to make it in a helmet that's going to give me access to Fine Potion and additional leap, which is nice for my own survivability because it's going to knock back monsters further. But the really important thing here is actually the Cloak of Shadows. Cloak of Shadows is going to make it so you really only have to worry about killing the boss of any pack, since all of his minions are going to be completely blinded and typically outside of the range of gaining aggro. So being able to make something as simple as Nadir with a Nef and a Tear rune gives you access to a massive screen-wide Cloak of Shadows that can absolutely make or break the difference, especially on a hardcore character. I actually wanted to cover another thing just because it happened to come up and I realized I hadn't really talked about it, and it's how to optimize using Leap Attack, this skill itself. So right now we're fighting Iswal, and let me show you what happens if all I do is hold down right click on Izzy himself. So here is Izzy, I jump to one side, I do a big leap, I jump to the other side, I do this big leap, I jump to the other side. You'll notice I'm spending a lot of time in the air jumping from one side of Izzy to the other one. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk slightly farther away, hold down right click, and not let go while not targeting Izzy. I'm jumping in a much more concise area, which literally minimizes how long you are in the air. Jumping slightly off to the side of a boss without targeting them actually nets a higher amount of total damage per second because you're spending less time flying through the air itself. That's ridiculous. It's actually kind of bananas. And he's dead. There you go. You have Act 4 done. You did it all yourself. Chaos Sanctuary was an absolute breeze. If you were really impatient like me, you might have died to Diablo just a couple times. Like I said, it's kind of difficult to stay alive inside of his fire hose in normal since it's not glitched. It will always hit you as long as you're within range of it. His firestorm can also do a little bit of really aggressive damage since it does fire and physical. If you have swapped over to your Act 3 mercenary to gain access to that Ice Blast as well as that Glacial Spike, it's going to go a really long way to actually give you CC and area control that you really suffer to have, especially on a barbarian. Anything that you pick up that might give him some additional survivability or some additional utility, go ahead and throw it on. We haven't upgraded the Maul at all, but we picked up this dual res with attack rating helmet. Really nice, just a little bit of additional survivability and chance to hit. We're still using Magic Find when we're killing the bosses by the end of it. You might have picked up a couple charms with some resistances or elemental damage. Anything that you can stack onto your build to increase the damage output or survivability, the better. Feel free to use any garbage charms that you come across at this point, because an inventory full of garbage charms is going to be better than an inventory full of nothing. Still using the teleport staff on swap. So walking into Act 5, we have a couple different things that we really want to prioritize so that we can set ourselves up for the best amount of success moving forward. I'm going to talk about both online and in single player. So if you're online, you basically want to, if you're online, you can feel free to do a bunch of chaos runs and ultimately bail runs. Just remember that you need to be at least level 25 to start actually getting experience from any of those monsters. And you can take that all the way up to level 40 if that's how you like to play the game. Most notably, you really only have to hit like level 30, 33 maybe, before you can sufficiently walk into Act 1 in Nightmare. For a single player, we're gonna have to handle it a little bit differently, but we have a couple tools in our arsenal here, most notably player settings. So we're gonna be able to farm on Eldritch and Pindle, so Eldritch at first and then moving up to Pindle, and they generate a ton of experience, especially on high player count. And the best thing about the Leap Attack Barb is that we actually have so much AoE damage that's always going to hit. You can pretty actively kill these monsters on higher player settings, and you also have a couple different options as far as mercenaries. You can go with the Act 2 mercenary with Blessed Aim, you go with Act 3 mercenary for the cold and CC, which is what I'm going to use. And we want to get up to, again, around that level 30, 33-ish. We also want to take a trip into Cows, and we also want to shop in Nightmare as well. So we have a couple different things. Let's first get our levels up to at least level 30. We're going to make sure to do all of the relevant quests. We're going to get our sockets. we're going to get our runes and make an Ancient's Pledge. I'm going to throw that onto the Act 3 Mercenary for right now, but it's always good to have an option of that as well in case we get a really nice one-handed weapon, then we can throw it on for additional survivability. We also want to go and actually save Anya so we get the all resistance scroll and then be able to farm Pindle as well. And she'll give you access to a primal helm, and hopefully that has some plus skills that are really nice. And then there's something to keep in mind as far as leap attack is concerned, and it's that there's a certain point where your weapon damage doesn't matter so much anymore. The actual skill itself is going to continue to scale damage, attack rating, as well as the AoE damage, which again hits multiple times on the same target. So being able to get into any plus skills, so +1 to combat skills on any weapon that we might find, as well as eventually making spirit swords, are really good options for making sure that the AoE damage is hitting as hard as possible, and you don't necessarily have to worry about your weapon's base damage too much. But the Barbarian does have the saving grace that there are a lot of two-handed swords that you can make spirit out of, so you actually still have a decent weapon base for the leap attack enhanced damage to scale off of, which is something that other classes just do not have access to. Starting from here, I'm gonna get up to Eldritch and I'm gonna hard farm him up until level 30, where I'm gonna make sure to kill Shank as well, because you always wanna get that potion price to be reduced. Right now, potions are gonna cost twice as much as they normally would, so don't go filling up your inventory here. If you haven't already, go back to Act 4, fill up your inventory, and then come back in for this farming portion. So we just hit level 30. We actually swapped back over to an Act 2 Mercenary because while we were killing Eldritch, we found a really nice poleaxe for them to use. A lot of enhanced damage, max damage, life leech, etc. While we were farming, we also happened to pick up a max damage with attack rating jewel. We slotted that into our maul, and then we also grabbed these rancid gas potions. Rancid gas potions damage on players 8 isn't as important, but since it's applying tick damage every frame, they won't be regenerating. We're only doing damage once every second. Monsters do regenerate just a little bit. This helps to make sure that all of our damage is basically remembered so that we don't have to waste any time doing double damage onto targets that have already been hit. In addition to that, we've stacked as much magic find as we can find. We found a chip gem and a random topaz. We're using magic find on the helmet, on the gloves, and on the boots. Right now, we're sitting at 79 magic find. That'll go a really long way to help find some decent stuff while you're farming Eldritch, and then later on Pindle. As far as alternative gear that we have found, we did pick up a great maul. Now, if I happen to find enough chip gems, I'm definitely going to roll this for the same thing that we did with the regular maul. A couple sockets, a bit of enhanced damage would go a really long way to give us a huge weapon to use. We've also picked up a couple rubies and a Rao rune. This will be nice for res later, and then we'll keep the rubies and gem shrine them up to be able to make crushing blow crafted gloves once we have access to a perfect ruby. With the build, we finally spec'd into a couple of the passives, so we have that run walk so that our time in town is more efficient, and then we finally have the all resistance as well. This will be really nice, especially once we have battle command and any plus skills. We'll just keep generating additional survivability without necessarily having to worry about the stats themselves this early in the game. The next part of the route as far as skills go is to actually spec down into battle command and battle orders. Battle command is just really important to get that additional skill point onto leap, so that once we max it out, we can still bump up our damage a little bit. You may also want to spec down into Grim Ward. This is going to be a really important tool for farming stuff like cows later on. And just overall, being able to reduce enemy physical resistance goes a really long way to increase the damage from leap attacks, since that deals physical damage on the AoE. Now that we've hit this level, I am going to move forward with getting the rest of our quests done. And I want to make sure to get Pindle open so I can continue farming there. And there you have it. Rocking as much magic find as we could possibly stack before the kill. You got your Bale kill. We're sitting at level 36. This is a little bit higher than I would typically be at this point, but I was trying to more replicate the average experience where people are going to sit in Bale runs for a bit, try to get over leveled, because the higher level you are, the game is just going to be that much easier walking into Nightmare. Obviously, make sure to pick up any of the goodies that you would have if you're playing a multiplayer. Hopefully you pick up something good. I would recommend going into Nightmare. We need to go shop, because shopping at Charcy in Nightmare is going to give us access to really, really good resistances on our gear, which is even more important if you happen to be using the two-hander like this. Let's go see what kind of upgrades that we got, and then we'll walk into Nightmare and I'll show you what's good to shop for and what you should prioritize next. Big weapon for the Mercenary, huge open wounds. It has hit blinds target, freezes target, slows target. While it's not a higher damage option than what we have on right now, it brings so much utility on it that if you were to walk into Nightmare and then target farm something like Indariel, this is going to go a really long way to make farming bosses in general super easy. With the huge mobility that we have from Leap and the ability to teleport over any walls that we find, being able to farm Indariel with even like 50 to 100 magic find is a huge gateway into a ton of the gear that's going to make this build really shine. I'm talking about 3-piece Saigons across the gloves, belt, and boots, 2-piece Sorceress with the belt and boots, 2-piece Angelics with the amulet in the ring, being able to pick up a Death's belt for Cannot Be Frozen, along with a Bone Snap weapon, which is a huge weapon to pick up. There are just so many great things that you could get while farming Nightmare and Indariel, even on an early game barbarian like this. What I would personally do right now is I'm gonna walk into Nightmare and show you what to farm for, so you can get the other resistances and stats that you're looking for on your gear, and then how I would approach Act 1. And then we'll call that done for the normal playthrough walkthrough of this, so that you kind of have one big synopsis of how to handle it, and then look forward to the next one where we're gonna talk about how to handle Nightmare and how to prepare for Hell as well. But let's go ahead and shop at Charcy just as the last little bit of this video. So for Nightmare, we also want to be able to shop Charcy and Geed efficiently. And that means you might want to re-roll your map a couple times, or wait until you're in a Battle.net game where you have the correct layout. But what you want is this top left exit for the town so that you can walk out, immediately leap back in and go back to Charcy to quickly reset her. Because typically going to the waypoint, going out to something like the Cold Plains and then coming back, especially online, is going to have really long load times. So you want to avoid that if you can. Going and checking Charcy, we kind of want to check everything right now, right? Because there are things that our mercenary could benefit from, even we could benefit from. I don't really have an armor to speak of here. And since we are in Nightmare, our resistances, I'll move out of the way. With the current setup using the Maul, our resistances actually aren't that bad considering I am rocking Magic Find in 4 of the slots of gear that I could have. If you're somebody who's a little bit new, or this is gonna be your first time piloting the Barb, staying alive with resistances like this is definitely going to be challenging. So you wanna go ahead and check Charcy. We're looking for helmets, armor, belts, gloves, boots, anything that can have resistances on them. And if we happen to find something nice like frost resistance with high res, we could even throw that either onto ourselves or onto our mercenary for additional crowd control options, because our mercenary is really going to help us stay alive in this early part of the game, and keeping the mercenary alive is now one of our priorities. In single player, just going between the different difficulties, so normal back into Nightmare is going to reset your map layouts. You just go up, you check Charcy, and bam. So already we have found massive options for us to pick up. I'm gonna buy both of these. These are boots that say 39 fire resistance and 36 lightning resistance. Now you could also get run walk on these same types of boots, but if you happen to have nothing else, this right here, all of a sudden we're near maxed out on fire, or we're near maxed out on lightning. And considering you can just stack up a bunch of thawing potions, you don't necessarily have to worry about cold resistance. But if you happen to find 40 cold resistance boots right off the bat, throwing those on as well, going to shore up a ton of the issues that you might run into in case you die or the thawing potions run out. But these boots are massive right off the bat right there. Then just checking everything else, we have really big life on this armor. That's also something that I would highly recommend picking up if you're not already using a stealth, or if you got really lucky and you're somehow using a smoke rune word already. I would easily wear this plus 59 to life. And our mercenary would also absolutely appreciate plus 59 to life on his gear as well, since he can only benefit from the flat life bonus. I'm gonna throw that onto him right now. You can technically check the weapons. I don't think it's really worth your time to be looking for weapons. You're probably not gonna find anything that's going to be better than yours, and you can always gamble weapons as well. You can definitely check out to see if there's anything nice for your mercenary. Also look to pick up any additional magic find that you can get. And even if you don't end up putting it on later on, check the boots for run walk as well, because that will make shopping in Nightmare that much faster. Literally just getting to Charcy and Geed a little bit faster. Managed to pick up 30 or 40 run walk boots, toss them on for this farming portion. We have really high level Nova. We can put that on for a little bit of additional CC for us. Life and poison res, not necessarily the best for us, but this right here, charge bolt when struck is kind of but 24 cold res on an armor, you could toss that on right now. I'm gonna pick up these magic find gloves. I don't really care about the poison resistance. And perfect. So after a couple resets, you know, joining a couple different BattleNet games if you're online, we finally found the top left exit because I don't like to drive myself completely crazy trying to be, you know, ridiculously efficient. The best way here would be to come up here to Charcy and immediately reset her. Shopping at Geed is also really nice. Charcy tends to have shields in this area. Oh, Artisan Shield. This could have rolled with an additional suffix. You could have slotted in a bunch of runes. But there you go. So I just found my first piece of run walk. I'll put those on. I really like actually going over to Geed and shopping at Geed. Since he doesn't have shields, he will often have a lot of the other options here. So we picked up some nice res here on a bigger belt. We have better magic find than the boots that we currently have. I will absolutely pick those up. We also have higher run walk. I'll pick up those as well. So now we have our magic find boots. I don't want to lose those. Check the rest of what he has. So my character swapping over to some resistances here, and then here as well. I really like these boots. While they have less total resistance than either one of these options, they have dual res, hit recovery, and magic find, which means I'm getting a lot of bang for my buck here. Our belt has resistances and hit recovery, big res on our ring, dual res plus max AR and dex. The amulet leaves a lot to be desired, which just means the moment we find anything good, we'll slot it in there immediately. If you were looking to beef them up even more, I came across a couple different options. I just kind of want to show these off as things that you could also use in these scenarios. We got a 2 socket with random stats that don't kind of matter, although taunt is a good thing to have, but gives us poison length reduction, fire res, life, as well as 2 sockets. I could throw 2 Ral runes into here if I wanted to. And then this thing alone says 78 fire res. I probably won't have to worry about fire res on any of the rest of my gear, which means that I could take these off, throw on some additional magic find while I'm farming. Any way for you to eke out a little bit of additional value here and there is going to go a really long way to keep your character alive, especially in Nightmare where monsters start to get a little bit more difficult to survive. Me personally, I wouldn't worry about having this much resistance. I would go ahead and swap out a couple of these pieces for magic find. I might even put some topazes into this and then use this as my magic find helmet, so I have decent survivability along with magic find on the kit. You always still have your nadir if you happen to make this, so if you're running into areas where you really can't survive and you're just trying to run through, throw up that Cloak of Shadows for that additional survivability. And then we want to prioritize taking this Flawless Ruby and getting it gem shrined so that we can craft Crushing Blow gloves. So we're going to need a Nephrune, a Jewel, heavy gloves, and a perfect ruby. This will give us some life leech, some life, as well as Crushing Blow, which would be really nice because I intend on target farming in Dariel for those set and uniques that I talked about a little bit earlier, just to make my transition into Nightmare and Hell that much easier. But there you go. I think that's everything that you really need to know. Bringing a barbarian using 1 respec and getting into Leap Attack at this point, it is so nice being able to farm on Leap Attack because it takes a lot of the guessing game out of the barbarian. Am I able to hit this monster? Do I have enough attack rating? You really don't have to worry about that when the skill itself is carrying almost 690 AoE damage, which again hits targets multiple times. This is huge. This type of consistent damage output is why you typically spec into Warcry at this point. Warcry's shortcomings are being able to manage it early game on mana is really rough, as well as the damage not being great and its area of effect being very small. If you're somebody who hates listening to the Warcry Barbarian scream for hours at a time, I'd really recommend checking out something like Leap Attack, because it also gives you the ability to stack Crushing Blow very easily, and you're able to target farm bosses, which you really can't do with a Singer Barb. Look forward to the next video where we're going to be covering our progression through Nightmare, how I prioritize the different stats and gear that we get walking into Nightmare, being able to target farm, and then trying to prepare for Hell. And then just some of the little things that you can know, what you need to skip, how you can prioritize things, and how you can kind of easily maneuver through what's probably the hardest part of a barbarian's life cycle, which is that early game where you always felt so weak, and Leap Attack really shores up a lot of those problems. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that it was helpful. I hope that it was informative. It's a little bit different from what I normally do, these type of Let's Play videos. So I hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.